Good morning, dear students. In the previous session, we were discussing about the respiratory system, where you have come to know that in humans, the organs of the respiratory system include nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and the lungs. Then we have discussed in detail about two organs which are involved in the respiratory system. We have discussed about the nose and the nasal cavity, where you have learnt that nose is the point of entry for air. It has two openings called nostrils, each leading into a nasal chamber. The nostrils have hairy lining to prevent dust particles from reaching into the lungs. The lining of the nasal chamber has mucus, a sticky fluid. What is mucus? It is a sticky fluid which traps the germs and the dust. The nasal chamber also warms and moistures the air that enters into the lungs. So, we should always remember that we should breathe through nose and not through the mouth. The inner lining of the nose also has some special cells, and these special cells are responsible for smell. Then, another important organ which is involved in the respiratory system is including pharynx, larynx, and trachea. So, first of all, we have discussed about pharynx. From the nose, the air, it passes behind the mouth into the pharynx, or you can say into the throat. This is the common passage for air and food. From here, from the pharynx, it leads into the air tube, and this air tube is called as the windpipe or the trachea. Then larynx. What is larynx? At the entrance of the trachea, there is a voice box or Adam's apple. This is called as larynx. It contains two ligamentous folds which are called as vocal cords. And when air is expelled forcibly through the vocal cords, it vibrates them and thereby it produces sound. The front opening, that is the front opening of the trachea, when we talk about it, when we had discussed about trachea, you have learned that the front opening of the trachea is called as glottis. The front opening of the windpipe, or you can say the trachea, is called as glottis, and the glottis is guarded by the glottis is guarded by the glottis is guarded by a muscular flap which is called as epiglottis. So the epiglottis, it closes the windpipe at the time of swallowing of food. Incomplete closure by the epiglottis during swallowing may cause coughing, and coughing takes place due to wrong entry of the food. Instead of entering into the food pipe, it moves towards the windpipe. So, coughing while eating throws the food which is wrongly entering into the windpipe. Therefore, coughing at that point of time is very important because that pushes the food out from the windpipe. Then, let's discuss about trachea in detail. The trachea, as you know, it is guarded by epiglottis. It is not letting the food to enter into the windpipe. The trachea or the windpipe then emerges from the larynx. The trachea or the windpipe, it emerges from the larynx, that is the voice box, down below in the neck, and then it runs in the middle of the chest up to a short distance between the two lungs. As you can see here in this module, the trachea, it runs in the middle of the chest up to a short distance between the two lungs, and then it divides into two branches. These branches are called as bronchi, as it is clearly visible in the module. These two branches are there. One there is complete section shown, and one is the frontal as well as the complete lung is shown. So here what happens, the trachea, it runs in the middle of the chest up to a short distance, and then it divides into two branches, and these two branches are termed as bronchi. The wall of the trachea, it is strengthened by C-shaped rings, as you can see in the module also. These are the C-shaped rings. So these C-shaped rings prevent the trachea from collapsing. That means it prevents it from falling down. The inner linings of the trachea, bronchi and bronchioles. Now the bronchi are further divided as branches. As you can see here in this module, the bronchi are further divided as bronchioles. So the trachea, bronchi and the bronchioles, they have ciliated epithelium cells present there. It is ciliated means they have finger-like projections, and the continuous movement of the cilia, it pushes out the unwanted particles that may be present in the inhaled air. Now, the two bronchi, they lead into the right and the left lungs respectively. This bronchi is the plural term for bronchus. Bronchus is the singular form. Alright. So each bronchus is further divided as bronchioles. As you have known, just now we have discussed that trachea emerges and it branches as bronchi into the left and right lungs, and the bronchi, it further divides as bronchioles. So the bronchi, or you can say the bronchus, is further divided into smaller and smaller branches. These smaller branches are called as bronchioles, and at the end of these bronchioles, there are microscopic air sacs present. Microscopic air sac means very, very small, or you can say very minute air sacs are present, and these air sacs are called alveoli. Each lung contains around millions of alveoli. Alveoli is the plural form for alveolus. Now, these alveoli are richly supplied with blood capillaries. As you can see in this module, it is very clearly visible here. The alveoli are richly supplied. This is the rich supply. This red and green color of the blood vessels or the blood capillaries which are shown here shows that it is covering the complete air sac. So these alveoli are richly supplied with blood capillaries covering the entire wall. The walls of the alveoli are extremely thin. They are very, very thin, and they are moist in nature. And the reason why they are extremely thin and moist is for allowing faster diffusion of gases. Faster diffusion of gases means faster mixing of the gases which are to be exchanged, mainly oxygen and carbon dioxide. Then we have to discuss about lungs, the most important organ in the body which is helpful in the process of respiration, and that is the lungs. All right, so the lungs are a pair of pink and spongy elastic organs. Elastic means they are very flexible. They are protected by the rib cage. The left lung is slightly smaller than the right lung. What is the reason why the right lung is smaller than the left lung? The reason is the left lung has two lobes. The reason why it has two lobes, the particular reason behind it is the left lung, it accommodates the heart in between. That is why it has two lobes present in them, whereas the right lung has three lobes. And this complete chest, it rests on a structure, and that is called as diaphragm. You can see here this part, this C-shaped, the dome-shaped structure which you find here, this is the diaphragm. This is a muscular sheet which internally divides the complete body into two cavities. The chest cavity and the chest cavity or thoracic cavity, that is above, and below part is it is called as abdominal cavity. All right, so this diaphragm, it divides the body into two parts. This part is called as thoracic part, or it is called as chest cavity, and the body part which is below the diaphragm is called as abdominal cavity. What is it called? It is called as abdominal cavity. The lungs are also protected from outside by two membranes. The two membranes are called as the outer pleura and the inner pleura. And the space between the two membranes is called as pleural effusion. The space between the two membranes, it is actually filled with a fluid. This is the pleural effusion, and this fluid, it acts as a shock absorber, and it protects the lungs. It absorbs the shock which the body may experience. So this fluid is actually acting as a shock absorber, and it is protecting the lungs. Now let's discuss about the gaseous exchange in lungs. The air which reaches the alveoli through respiratory passages, that is, nose, pharynx, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles, these are rich in oxygen. So, diffusion of gases occur through the blood capillaries which surrounds the air sac. So, the oxygen from the lungs, it diffuses into the blood and is picked up by hemoglobin that is present in the red blood cells. Then the carbon dioxide from the blood, it diffuses into the lungs and it is exhaled out of the body through the same passage. So, what is happening? The air which is reaching the alveoli through the passage, the respiratory passage, that is the air that enters into the mouth, from the mouth till the time it reaches to the lungs, we know that the air which we have inhaled is rich in oxygen. All right, the air which we have inhaled is rich in oxygen. Now, what happens with this gas which is present in the lungs? The diffusion takes place. The diffusion of gases occur through the blood capillaries which is surrounding the air sac. So, what is happening? The oxygen that is present in the air which we have inhaled from the lungs, it is getting diffused into the blood. In the blood capillaries, there is blood present. All right. So the oxygen which is inhaled, it is passed on into the blood. Okay. Now, when oxygen is taken up by the blood, in the blood there is presence of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is present in the red blood cells. Okay, so these red blood cells, they take this oxygen. All right, so hemoglobin takes up this oxygen and then it forms oxyhemoglobin, and then this oxygenated blood is transported to different parts of the body. That means it is reaching to different cells in our body. Now the work is not over. The oxygen is diffused. But in the blood, there is also presence of carbon dioxide. At that point of time only, when the oxygen is taken up by the blood from the lungs, at that same point of time, the blood is giving out the carbon dioxide to the into the lungs. Okay, oxygen is taken in by the blood and carbon dioxide is given out by the blood. Okay, so this carbon dioxide which the blood diffuses into the lungs is exhaled out through the same passage from where oxygen reached the lungs. Okay, so this is how the diffusion, or you can say the gaseous exchange in the lungs take place. Let me tell you once again. Understand this way. Oxygen is inhaled from the mouth. It passes through different channel and it is finally reaching into the lungs. Just now you have learned that lungs have the the lungs, they contain the bronchioles, and at the tip of the bronchioles there is a microscopic air sac present. There are millions of air sacs present, and these air sacs, they are richly supplied with blood capillaries. So definitely if there are blood capillaries present, there will be presence of blood. So what is happening? The oxygen which has reached the lungs, now it is taken up by the blood which is present in the blood capillaries. Okay, so oxygen is taken up by the blood which is present in the blood capillaries. Blood has the presence of red blood cells where there is presence of hemoglobin. So hemoglobin combines up with this oxygen which is taken up from the lungs, and it forms oxyhemoglobin, and then this oxygenated blood is transported to different parts of the body, thereby it is reaching to each cell in our body. At that same point of time, the blood is diffusing the carbon dioxide from the blood capillaries into the lungs, and this carbon dioxide thereafter is passed out of our body through the same passage from where the oxygen has reached the lungs. That means from the lungs it will be passing on into the bronchi, from the bronchi into the trachea, from the trachea into the larynx, then pharynx, then into the nasal passage, or into the through the mouth it is exhaled out of our body. So this is the simple method or simple process which is taking place for the exchange of gases. Oxygen is used up and carbon dioxide which is produced is exhaled out of the body. So this is all for today. Hope you have understood this process of respiration, the different organs which are involved, and how the air is reaching to the lungs, and thereafter what happens with the oxygen that is reaching into the lungs. In the next class, we'll be discussing about the phases in respiration, and also we'll be discussing about mechanism of breathing. So for that, you need to revise what we have already discussed, and also you have to at least read it once what is written next in your book, so that you are aware of what we are going to study in the next session. So please revise what is taught and keep doing your work in the copies. Okay? God bless you.